She removed poisoned arrows from a wolf. When he shifted, the alpha king declared her his mate. Mist clung to the ground, curling around roots and rocks, making each step uncertain. The air smelled of damp earth and ancient leaves, carrying a quiet, almost whispered energy that spoke of things older than memory. Alara moved carefully among the undergrowth, her boots pressing softly into the soil. She had lived near these woods all her life, yet even she felt a shiver run through her as the wind moaned between the trees. Alara was a healer, trained by her mother and grandmother, and she carried the tools of her craft in a worn satchel at her side. Herbs, bandages, salves, and a small knife nestled together, ready for whatever might come. Her village lay a half-day's walk from this forest, and the elders had warned her not to wander too far. Wolves roamed these woods, they said, but Alara had always believed that fear alone should not rule a life. And so she walked deeper, seeking rare herbs that only grew in the damp shadows of this forest. She had been kneeling to gather a cluster of bluebell-like flowers when she heard the faint sound of pain, low, desperate, almost human in its anguish. Her heart skipped a beat. Wolves, she thought, or worse. Still, curiosity and instinct drove her forward. She followed the sound until she came to a small clearing where the sunlight broke through the trees in golden slivers, and there she saw him. The wolf lay on the ground, its fur dark as midnight and matted with blood. 2 arrows protruded from its side, their shafts blackened and wickedly tipped. The creature's golden eyes, wide with pain, met hers as it trembled. Every instinct in her body screamed to run, yet something held her in place. This was no ordinary wolf. Its gaze carried intelligence, awareness, almost a pleading recognition. Alara set down her satchel and crouched carefully, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "I won't hurt you." The wolf's ears flicked, its body tense, ready to spring, but it did not move away. She reached for the first arrow. The shaft was slick with blood, the poison still fresh, and she grimaced. Removing it would be dangerous, but she had no choice. Her hands worked steadily, cleaning and dressing the wound as best she could, murmuring soft words of reassurance. She had healed animals before, but never one like this. Every muscle in the wolf's body quivered as if aware that survival depended on her skill. Time stretched, silent but for the occasional rustle of leaves and the low whine of the wounded creature. As she finished bandaging the second arrow wound, a strange warmth spread from the wolf to her fingertips, almost like faint pulses beneath its fur. She froze, her breath catching. This was no ordinary injury. The creature throbbed with a hidden, raw energy she could feel in her bones. Her heart raced with fear and awe at the same time. Suddenly, the wolf growled, not a simple, angry growl, but a deep, vibrating sound that seemed to echo through the clearing. Its body trembled violently, and before Alara could react, it began to change. Limbs stretched, bones shifted, and fur receded like mist disappearing in the sun. She stumbled backward, her eyes wide, heart hammering. The air shimmered around the creature, and when the transformation completed, a man stood where the wolf had been. He was tall, imposing, and impossibly powerful. His hair was dark and wild, falling around his shoulders, and his golden eyes, those same eyes she had looked into as a wolf, burned with an intensity that made her knees weaken. His skin was pale against the shadows of the forest, and his presence radiated authority and danger. He did not speak immediately. He merely watched her, head tilted slightly, as if measuring her courage, her fear, and something else that Alara could not name. I healed you," she managed to say, voice shaking. She instinctively stepped back, but her eyes remained fixed on him. "You're hurt. You needed help." The man's gaze softened just a fraction, though a tension still ran through his stance. "Few have dared touch me," he said finally, his voice low and resonant, carrying a weight that made the forest itself seem to pause. "Fewer still have done so without fleeing." He took a slow step forward and the ground seemed to respond, trembling lightly beneath his movement. Alara's heart pounded. She knew stories of the Alpha King, an immortal ruler who had been cursed long ago, forced to take the form of a wolf until one brave soul healed him and accepted his truth. She had never imagined the legends were real. And yet standing before her now, he was as real as the forest, as present as the wind brushing her hair. I didn't know," she whispered, swallowing hard. Her hands trembled not from fear alone, but from the magnitude of what she had witnessed. She could feel a strange pull, an invisible tether linking her to him. He tilted his head again, golden eyes narrowing slightly. "And now you know." He took another step, closer this time, and the air between them thickened with unspoken tension. "Do you understand what this means, healer?" Alara shook her head. I don't," she admitted. Her mind raced. He was dangerous, powerful, and immortal, and yet something in the depths of her heart urged her not to flee, not yet. "You have healed me," he said, voice lowering to a near whisper, "and in doing so you have marked yourself." He paused, letting the words settle like a stone in her chest. "Marked yourself as mine." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Birds stopped singing, leaves ceased rustling, as if nature itself awaited her response. Alara's mind spun. She had come seeking herbs, never imagining she would encounter a creature of legend, never imagining she would face a destiny that could not be escaped. I didn't mean she faltered. The words died on her lips and a sudden, inexplicable understanding passed between them. His power was immense, yet it was tempered with a strange vulnerability. He had been hurt and she had healed him. And in that act, something irrevocable had changed. The man stepped closer still, and she could see the faint scars along his arms, remnants of battles she could only imagine. His eyes searched hers, probing, questioning, as if seeking permission she did not know she could give. "You have a choice," he said, "though it is not truly yours alone. Once a healer tends to an Alpha King, the bond begins." Alara swallowed hard, her hands clenching at her sides. "A bond?" she asked, voice barely audible. He nodded slowly. "A bond that ties your fate to mine. The forest will watch, the wolves will watch, and one day you will understand the depth of what has begun here." His golden eyes glimmered with something fierce and tender at once. "You may choose to leave, but the pull will always remain. Courage brought you to me, healer. And courage will bind you to me." For a long moment, they simply regarded one another, the forest a silent witness to this fateful encounter. Alara felt a strange mixture of fear, awe, and an unexplainable longing. She knew that life as she had known it, her village, her quiet days of gathering herbs, the simple rhythms of survival, had ended the moment she had knelt beside that wounded wolf. Suddenly, a distant howl echoed through the trees, sharp and urgent. The man's expression darkened and he moved toward the shadows of the forest. "They know you are here," he said, eyes flashing gold. "Hunters, those who would see me fall and claim the woods for themselves. You must come with me." Alara's heart leapt, terror and determination battling within her. She could run, she realized. She could leave this forest and escape the legends and danger. And yet, something deeper, something that had taken root the moment she laid hands on him, would not let her. She nodded, gripping her satchel tightly. He turned, and together they stepped into the misted trees, the forest closing around them like a living, breathing thing. Wolves moved silently at the edges of their vision, shadows that belonged to him and yet seemed to watch her with interest and caution. As they walked, the Alpha King glanced at her. "You have seen me as I am," he said softly, "and yet you have not fled. Few ever do. That courage, that is what binds us." Alara kept her eyes forward, trying to calm the racing of her heart. She knew nothing of what lay ahead, of curses, battles, or the weight of immortality, but a spark of determination lit within her. She had healed him. She had faced the unknown, and now, by some strange fate, she was part of it. The mist thickened, swallowing the path ahead, and the sounds of the forest became muted, almost dreamlike. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped, and a pair of glowing eyes watched them from the shadows. The Alpha King's golden gaze met hers once more, fierce and commanding. "You are mine, healer," he said, voice low and certain, carrying the weight of centuries. "And soon, you will understand what that truly means." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. Her hands tightened around her satchel, and yet a strange sense of inevitability settled over her. She had entered the forest seeking herbs and safety. Instead, she had entered a world of magic, danger, and a bond that could not be undone. And she did not know whether to fear it or embrace it. The forest seemed to hum, alive with the promise of power, danger, and destiny. And somewhere in the depths of her heart, Alara realized that her life would never again be her own. The deeper Alara followed, the denser the forest became. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting like living things, and the mist thickened around their ankles. Every step felt heavier, as if the earth itself resisted her intrusion. The Alpha King walked with effortless grace, his golden eyes scanning the trees, alert to even the faintest disturbance. Wolves padded silently around them, moving like shadows that merged and separated without sound. They obeyed him completely, yet they observed her as if testing her courage. Alara kept her hands tight on the straps of her satchel, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing on her. The closer they moved to the heart of the forest, the more she sensed that this world existed under rules she did not yet understand. Magic pulsed in the air like an invisible heartbeat. Even the mist seemed to hum, vibrating with an energy that was older than the mountains, older than the kingdom itself. The Alpha King finally stopped in a small clearing where the trees formed a natural barrier, enclosing them like walls. Sunlight barely pierced the canopy, leaving only faint beams that glimmered on the damp ground. At the center was a stone pedestal, covered in moss and etched with symbols that seemed to move when she looked away. Wolves lay around the clearing, silent and watchful, their golden eyes fixed on her. "You will rest here," the Alpha King said, his voice deep and commanding. "The forest is not yet safe for you to walk alone, and I must prepare for what comes." Alara hesitated. "Why are they so different?" she asked, nodding toward the wolves. "They don't act like normal animals." "They are not," he said simply. His gaze softened slightly as he observed her struggle to understand. "They are my guardians, my eyes, my ears. Some are cursed, some are loyal by choice, and some are bound to the forest itself. You will learn their ways in time." Alara nodded slowly, her mind racing. She had heard stories of the Alpha King, a man cursed by sorcery, forced to live as a wolf until a healer of courage and heart would see his true form. She had thought the legends were just stories, but now, standing in the heart of his domain, she could feel the truth in every leaf, every shadow, every living thing that obeyed his command. "You do not need to fear them," he said, his golden eyes meeting hers again. "But you must respect them. The forest does not forgive ignorance." She swallowed hard and lowered her gaze, trying to calm the rush of emotions swirling inside her. Fear, awe, uncertainty. And though she dared not admit it even to herself, a pull toward him that she could not explain. He nodded slightly, as if sensing her inner conflict. "Tonight you will sleep here," he continued, "under my protection. Tomorrow you will begin to understand why you were drawn here, and why you cannot leave so easily." Alara wanted to ask him what he meant, but before she could speak, a rustle in the trees drew their attention. Wolves rose as one, ears perked and teeth bared, moving to form a protective circle around the clearing. The Alpha King's expression darkened. "They are coming," he said, his voice tight. "Hunters, those who seek to kill me and claim these woods." Her heart jumped. "Hunters." "Yes," he said, his tone like steel. "They do not know what they are dealing with. They will die if they enter my forest unprepared. And yet," he hesitated, eyes narrowing, "you are not yet ready to face them. You must trust me." Alara's pulse raced, but she nodded. Somehow, despite the fear, she felt a strange certainty. The Alpha King had saved her from panic with his presence, and though his power was frightening, it was also oddly protective. She could feel it wrapping around her like a shield, an invisible promise that she would not face the darkness alone. Night fell and the forest changed. Shadows stretched longer, moving as if alive, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air. Wolves prowled in the distance, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Alara wrapped her cloak around herself, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to ignore the whispers of fear creeping into her mind. "You cannot sleep," the Alpha King said suddenly, his voice low but firm. She jumped, startled that he had been so quiet. "The forest is alive, it watches. Even your dreams may be influenced by what lingers here." Alara nodded, understanding that warning. She had already felt it, the pull of the magic in the air, the strange energy that seemed to brush against her skin and whisper in her ears. She could feel it in her bones, like the forest was alive and aware of her presence. Hours passed in tense silence. She watched as the Alpha King moved with ease among the wolves, communicating without words, his golden eyes flashing with authority and command. She realized that this man, this creature who could shift between wolf and human, held power beyond anything she had ever imagined. And yet she also saw a trace of loneliness in his gaze, a sorrow buried beneath the strength. Curiosity overcame her fear. "Why were you cursed?" she asked softly, not knowing why the words came out. The Alpha King paused, sitting down on the moss-covered ground. His golden eyes reflected the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. "Long ago," he said quietly, "I was betrayed. My court, the people I trusted most, turned against me. A rival sorcerer cursed me, binding my form to the forest and to the wolves. I was to remain a beast until someone healed me and accepted my true nature. Few ever dared." Alara listened, her heart aching at the loneliness and injustice in his voice. She thought of the wounds he had carried, not only on his body but on his spirit. I didn't know," she said gently. "I only saw you in pain, I couldn't leave you there." A faint smile flickered across his face, almost imperceptible, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "That courage that is rare," he said. "Few would have touched me and fewer still would have faced me once I shifted." Alara felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mix of fear and something she could not name. "I am not afraid," she said, though even as she spoke, her hands trembled slightly. "Not of you." His golden eyes softened, and for a moment the power and danger faded, leaving only the raw human emotion behind them. "Perhaps," he murmured, "you are braver than even I could have imagined." The forest stirred around them, as if acknowledging the bond forming in the quiet clearing. Wolves shifted, ears twitching, eyes watching, sensing the strange energy between Healer and Alpha King. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying a sense of ancient magic that hummed beneath their feet. The following day, Alara learned the depth of the forest's rules. The Alpha King guided her through hidden paths and enchanted glades, revealing places where the trees themselves held memory and magic. She saw ruins covered in moss, stones etched with glowing runes, and pools of water that reflected not just the sky but distant visions of past events. "You must understand," he said as they walked, "that everything here answers to me. The forest, the wolves, even the magic that lingers, it is my domain. You are a guest, but also a part of it now." Alara nodded, trying to absorb the weight of his words. Every step through the forest was a lesson in trust and respect. She healed minor wounds among the wolves, learned to recognize the subtle signs of danger, and felt herself becoming more attuned to the rhythm of this world. Yet with every passing moment, she felt the invisible threads pulling her closer to him. By evening, a distant sound broke the quiet, the snap of a branch, the low murmur of voices not carried by the wind. The Alpha King's stance stiffened, his golden eyes flashing like molten metal. "They are near," he said. "Hunters have entered the forest." They will not leave easily. Alara felt her heart pound. She had been warned, yet hearing it made the danger real. "What should we do?" she asked. "We survive," he said simply, a note of grim determination in his voice. "And you will play a part. Your knowledge of healing, of herbs, it will be crucial. They do not understand the forest, but they will test its limits and ours." Night fell once more, darker and heavier than before. Wolves formed silent circles around them, their golden eyes reflecting moonlight and danger. The Alpha King remained close to her side, a constant presence of strength and authority. Alara felt the stirrings of fear and fascination mingling in her chest. She did not know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing clearly: she could not turn back. As she settled near the roots of an ancient tree, the Alpha King spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have chosen to remain here, healer. You may not yet understand the bond we share, but it exists. Courage brought you to me, and now it binds you. One day you will understand the depth of what that means." Alara closed her eyes, listening to the forest around her, the low murmur of the wolves, the distant rustle of hunters approaching. Somewhere in the depths of the mist, destiny waited, and she could feel it pressing against her heart. She had entered this forest seeking herbs and peace. Instead, she had found danger, magic, and a bond she could not yet name. Her thoughts drifted to the Alpha King, to the golden eyes that had seen her courage and chosen her, and to the weight of the fate that had begun the moment she had removed the poisoned arrows. The forest whispered promises of trials, of loyalty, of transformation, and of power. And somewhere deep in her chest, a quiet, undeniable spark of trust, and something more flickered to life. For the first time, she realized that her journey had only begun, and the chains of fate were already tightening around them both. The forest pulsed with magic as the first light of dawn broke through the thick canopy, casting golden rays on moss-covered stones and twisted roots. The mist lingered low to the ground, curling like silent serpents among the trees. Alara's heart beat faster with each step as she followed the Alpha King deeper into the heart of his domain. She had grown accustomed to the shadows and whispers, but today the forest felt heavier, charged with danger and anticipation. The hunters were near. She could feel their presence, like a cold shadow brushing against the edges of her mind. She had seen their traps, broken by the forest or the wolves, but the final confrontation was inevitable. She gripped her satchel tighter, filled with herbs and tools she had learned to use in ways she never imagined. Her hands were steady, though her thoughts swirled with fear and determination. The Alpha King moved silently ahead, every muscle taut, golden eyes scanning the trees. He had become a figure of authority and awe, commanding the forest and its creatures without effort. And yet, Alara had seen moments when his guard slipped, when the weight of his curse, his loneliness, and the centuries of betrayal pressed against him. She had come to understand that beneath his fearsome power, he was both immortal and fragile, bound by a past that even he could not escape alone. "This way," he whispered, leading her toward a hidden grove where ancient stones formed a circle. The runes etched into them glowed faintly in the early light. "Here we can make our stand. Here, the forest itself will aid us if we act with courage and trust." Alara nodded, swallowing hard. She had never thought herself a warrior, yet she knew courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And today, she would act, not only to protect herself, but to protect him, the Alpha King who had become more than a legend in her eyes. As they prepared, wolves took their positions around the circle, forming a living barrier. The Alpha King turned to Alara. "You must stay close. Your skill will save more than my life today." Her heart pounded. "I will do what I can," she said. Her voice was steady, though every nerve in her body trembled with anticipation. The forest shivered, and then the hunters appeared, stepping through the mist like dark phantoms. Their weapons gleamed in the faint light, their eyes hardened by greed and ambition. They had come to claim the Alpha King, unaware that he was more than they could ever face. Alara felt a surge of determination. She moved forward, her hands working quickly to prepare remedies and distractions, using powders that emitted smoke and scents that confused and disoriented the intruders. Wolves lunged silently from the shadows, not to kill, but to intimidate, teeth bared and eyes glowing. The Alpha King shifted, his form blending between man and wolf, moving with supernatural speed and precision. He did not attack recklessly, but each motion was calculated, a blend of power and restraint that left the hunters struggling to anticipate him. Alara watched, both awed and terrified, as he defended the forest and all who lived within it. Yet even in the midst of battle, she noticed moments of vulnerability. His eyes flickered with hesitation, a reminder that even immortals carried fear and doubt. Alara realized that her courage, her willingness to stand beside him, mattered more than she had ever known. She was not just a healer or a helper, she had become a part of his strength, a presence that anchored him amid the chaos. Hours passed, though time felt distorted in the heart of the forest. The hunters' forces began to waver, their resolve breaking under the relentless precision of the Alpha King and the clever interventions of Alara. Smoke, shadows, and magic wove together into a force that was greater than the sum of its parts. Finally, the leader of the hunters stepped forward, a sorcerer of dark intent who had orchestrated the curse centuries ago. He raised his staff, summoning shadows that twisted and lunged like serpents. The Alpha King's form shimmered, golden eyes blazing, as he stepped forward to confront the ancient enemy. Alara's heart raced. "What can I do?" she whispered, moving closer, her hands ready with remedies and powders that could disrupt the sorcerer's magic. "Trust me," the Alpha King said, his voice steady yet carrying the weight of centuries, "and act when the moment comes." The sorcerer's dark magic clashed with the Alpha King's aura of power. Shadows hissed and writhed, twisting around the circle of stones, but they could not break the bond between healer and Alpha King. Alara moved with precision, scattering powders and placing herbs in strategic spots, creating a shield of energy that amplified the Alpha King's strength. She could feel the forest responding, bending to their courage and unity. The sorcerer faltered, his spells unraveling under the combined force of the forest, the Alpha King, and the healer's skill. With a final surge, the Alpha King roared, a sound that shook the trees and sent the hunters fleeing. The forest seemed to breathe with relief, the mist lifting slightly as sunlight pierced through. The battle was over, but the aftermath left the Alpha King struggling with exhaustion and the remnants of his curse. Alara knelt beside him, checking for injuries, her hands steady despite the adrenaline still thrumming through her veins. "You did it," she whispered, a mixture of awe and relief in her voice. "We did it." He looked at her, golden eyes softening, vulnerability breaking through the mask of power. "No," he said quietly. "You did it. You chose to stand with me when few would have. You faced the forest, the hunters, and the curse itself without fear. That is what saved me." Alara felt a warmth rise in her chest. "I did what I had to. I couldn't leave you alone in the forest, not after everything." He reached out, his hand brushing her arm, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. "You have seen me at my strongest and my weakest," he said softly, "and still you remain. That is no small thing, healer." Her heart raced and she looked away briefly, unable to meet the depth of his gaze. I don't fully understand everything yet," she admitted. "The forest, the curse, it's all too much, but I know I cannot turn away." The Alpha King's expression grew solemn, yet a rare softness touched his features. "Then you understand in some way what it means to be bound by courage and choice. The curse is broken, or at least weakened, but the bond remains stronger than any magic. You have chosen me, and in doing so, you have freed me in ways the sorcerer never could." Alara looked up, her eyes meeting his. She saw centuries of pain, longing, and isolation reflected there, but also the flicker of hope that she had ignited. "The bond, it's not just about the curse, is it?" she asked. "No," he said, stepping closer. "It is about trust, courage, and the choice to stand together, even when the path is uncertain. You healed more than my body, you healed my spirit." A quiet breeze stirred the trees, carrying the scent of moss and sunlight. Wolves padded closer, circling them protectively, as if acknowledging the new order of their bond. Alara felt a profound sense of belonging, a connection not just to the Alpha King, but to the forest, the magic, and the life she had stepped into. "You are mine," he said softly, golden eyes locked onto hers. "And I am yours, not by curse, not by fate alone, but by choice. Do you understand?" Alara nodded, feeling the weight of destiny and freedom intertwined. "I do," she said, "and I choose this us." He reached out, taking her hands in his, and for the first time his wolf side receded entirely, leaving only the man she had come to trust and admire. The forest seemed to sigh around them, the magic settling into a gentle rhythm. Days passed after the battle, and the forest gradually returned to its natural state. Wolves roamed freely, no longer tense with the threat of hunters. The Alpha King guided Alara through the forest, teaching her the deeper rhythms of the land, the magic that flowed through roots and stones, and the ancient secrets that had been hidden for centuries. She learned to read the subtle signs of the forest, to sense danger and opportunity, and to understand the balance of power and trust that governed this enchanted world. Through it all, their bond deepened. They spoke in quiet moments of past regrets, of hopes, and of dreams neither had dared to share with another soul. Each conversation, each shared silence, strengthened the connection between healer and Alpha King. Alara realized that love was not just a spark of desire. It was courage, sacrifice, and understanding in the face of danger. One evening, under the golden glow of a setting sun, the Alpha King led her to a high ridge overlooking the forest. Wolves circled below, their forms small in the fading light, and the mist clung to the valley like a silken veil. He turned to her, eyes reflecting the brilliance of the sky. "You have changed me," he said softly. "Not just freed me from the curse, but taught me that trust, loyalty, and courage can heal even centuries of sorrow. You are my mate, healer, and my heart knows it now as surely as the forest knows the sunrise." Alara felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of relief, awe, and quiet happiness. "And you have changed me," she whispered. "You've shown me courage I didn't know I had, a world I didn't know existed, and a bond I didn't know I could feel." He smiled, a rare, warm smile that seemed to melt the last of the shadows around them. "Then we begin a new chapter together," he said. "Not bound by curse, not bound by fear, but by choice, courage, and the bond we forged in fire and shadow." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest bathed in twilight, Alara and the Alpha King stood together, golden eyes and determined heart aligned. The bond was complete, their destinies intertwined. And though challenges might come again, they knew that together they could face the world, wild, magical, and untamed. The forest whispered around them, alive with magic and promise, and Alara understood at last. Courage, choice, and trust could defy even the oldest curses. And love, true and steadfast, could redeem even the most broken souls.